you have value to add to something. Work out what that is. The work feeds you, and then you feed the work, and you're in the world, and it's just this lovely sort of flow situation. The times when you feel really unhappy and the times when you're sort of questioning yourself and feeling really low are the moments where you don't know where to put this value that you have. It's like it's a two-pronged thing. It's like having value, and the second thing is to have a place to put that, like have a common goal that you can add that value to. We think about independence of countries or people, we just go, no, you're valuable. And we just leave them and they go, oh great, I've got all this value. But unless that people have got a place to put it, it doesn't mean much. And so it's really important to be clear about your value, but also knowing that that value can be applied in a place and it's worth something.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Adeel Akhtar is an actor. He sat down with me on the Upper West Side of Manhattan to talk about the work.
Do you have a typical way that you like to begin your preparation process when you get a new character?
So we both have experience of actor studio. So I went to actor studio drama school here in New York. And I suppose when I was a lot younger, it's a lot different to how it is now. And when I was a lot younger, it was arguable that I might have been over-preparing a little bit. To the point where I'd find myself on set or on stage and I was just stuck, basically. I couldn't really fight, flight, freeze. Oh yeah, I was frozen. And over the years now, I suppose I worked out what it was, and it was the idea of me. It was the idea of preparation rather than preparation itself. You know, it was like I liked the idea of feeling like an actor, so I would prepare in a particular type of way, but it actually wasn't doing how I am as a person any good, because I tend to be an overthinker anyway, and a little bit, terrified of everything. So, and now over the years, it's just relying on going case by case and relying on my instincts and working out what I have to, where it's good to sort of focus that attention. Sometimes if it's if it's a particular type of accent, it's sort of making sure that the accent is perfect, and then that unlocks lots of things. If it's something where the words feel really great to say, it's just making sure you hear the musicality of the word, and that is something that sort of backs up, opens the character up. If it's less wordy, if it's something which relies on behaviour, which is a strange way to describe it, if it relies on a character being in the world and how they react in the world physically, because there's not a lot of words to hide behind or a lot of words, then it's sort of working out what those behavioural gestures are. So it really does depend on what it is that I'm doing. Yeah. Whereas, so the short answer, I used to sort of prepare in every which way, and now I'm a bit older, it's just working out, just being more efficient with my energies and working out what to focus on for what in each part.
And you said somewhere that it was when you had a kid that this kind of changed.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Because you would have to find yourself doing this work that you took in a kind of a precious way, that you thought you needed to be in solitude, but suddenly you had to be taking care of your kid, and you realized that you could still do it. Like that. You said something like that, right? I found that fascinating, because it's like it would take something like that, right, to break us from the chains of thinking we have to do it in a certain way, because we're almost forced to do it. I got to exactly where I needed to get to anyway. So I spent so many years mulling over this, and I didn't have to be, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't even see those years of over preparing as a negative thing. I mean, it's, you know, it's even the idea of procrastination. You know, is procrastination a negative thing in itself, or is it steps towards leading to you to do the thing in the first place? Is there such a thing? You know, I don't think those years of me being quite like self-flagellating and hard on myself and over-preparing was a terrible thing to go through, because like you said, something broke, and what broke was just me being in the world, you know. So that you know, that came in the form of me having a kid and kids now and being married. And but I think in the like how an actor evolves, I think that break can sometimes happen anyway, you know. You just suddenly get to a point where you're going, well, the only thing we're really doing on camera or on stage is trying to endow something with some sort of emotional truth. So it kind of means being in the world.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It means just sort of being porous to the world and allowing that to...
Yes.
And then that sort of informs you in a very mysterious way in how you would enact something like in theatre or film or whatever.
Yes.
And the idea is to always keep that mystery alive, you know.
Yes. And you know, let me preface this by saying, whatever it takes for any actor to get, quote, there, I think is valid.
Yes.
Right?
100%.
Let's say that.
Yeah.
But let me just ask you this. Having that as a preface, and I may even repeat that at the end.
Sure. Sure.
Do you now, though, having gone through this, have some kind of, judgment is too strong of a word, but some kind of maybe empathy for actors who think that they need all of this preparation, all of this work that you were doing to get, quote, there, when what you just said actually is another way of doing it, which is like living in the moment or using life, or you said it better. Again, whatever it takes to get there.
100%.
Okay?
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, because I'm just curious, and I guess I'm pushing that a little bit, because I think people may be doing things like that because they think that that's part of the job.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have no judgment over anyone, really. I just, I see people who work really hard at their job and work really hard at preparing, and they, you know, they're amazing. And so I have no judgment over anyone. And like you said, whatever you need to do to get there is your journey, your particular journey. And, you know, look, just because I don't prepare as much as I used to when I was younger doesn't mean that there isn't, you know, it's almost like, what's the best way to describe it? It's almost like a tax. You pay a tax, right? It costs something.
Yeah.
So just because it doesn't cost me in the preparation means that it might cost me something that, you know, like I'm doing like Cherry Orchard at the moment. And, you know, I've got to throw myself about a bit, and I've got a few dings on my leg, and like, you know, my calf is hurting a little bit. You know what I mean? Yes. So it doesn't mean that there's that's almost, you know, tax makes it sound like a terrible thing as well, but it's pleasurable, as you wouldn't do it. You know, it's not like you're not suffering through it for it. You know, even though it looks like it's very intense work, you're actually.
Yes.
Through the work, you're more in the world than you've ever been, and that's
And you're making me think we really have to specify this, because I don't want anyone thinking that what I'm saying is that you could just phone in stuff, you know what I mean, and just be and not and you know, negate the preparation, the intense months of preparation. I mean, because what you're saying is that there is something that has to be done in order to create life. You know, and to be alive and to be true. Mm-hmm. But if they don't get to the truth, something has to be done. Yeah. to try and make that work.
Sure.
And it may require, if you're not able to do it the way you do it, it may require months of preparation for somebody who doesn't know how to get there any other way.
Exactly. Right? So it's each person in their journey, and the more important thing is to develop. If it's young actors or anyone who are sort of like crippled with this question, it's more important to know what you resonate with. You know, it's more important to know what you feel is some kind of, you know, I was listening to this Leonard Cohen documentary when he was really, really young, and he's wearing this like really long leather coat, and a beret, and he was a poet back in the day before he was a singer. And this really sort of snooty interviewer who was like, who's this young poet guy who thinks he was, so Mr. Cohen, you know, just like trying to trap him a little bit. And he says, so what are you trying to achieve with your poetry? He's a young kid, you know, he's only 19, 20. And he says, I'm just trying to achieve a grace, right? And then he goes, and then the guy's like, this is brilliant for him. It's like, this is catnip. So he goes, oh, like this 19, 20-year-old is telling this 60, 70-year-old about grace. And he's like, what's grace? What do you mean by grace? And he answered it very sort of beautifully and succinctly. He was just sort of saying, it's when your interiority, when the inside, your internal world is the same as the outside world, and it's expressed in the exterior, and there's a flow going on between those things. So the more important thing is less crippling yourself with the question of how to get to it. It's just when you feel it, and just understanding that. And it happens in a day, it happens when you watch a bit of film, you know, it happens when you hear a bit of music. And it's good just to bank those moments, because when you are sort of confronted with these sort of crippling questions, you just know what it feels like. And you can, and that's your sort of benchmark really for to move forward through the work or whatever.
Yes. What was your experience like at the Actors Studio? Did you get what you needed out of that? Would you have done it again if you had to do it over?
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes, because it sort of got me to the spot of, I was giving myself a very hard time. I wouldn't believe anything that I did. But that's all because the teachers there would hold you to a high standard. You know, it wasn't a question of going through a whole play. It was a question of taking one tiny scene and excavating it for all, mining it and mining it and mining it and mining it. And I'm so indebted to that school for that, you know, just to go, well, in an instant, in a moment, you can sort of, Benedict, this is what's coming into my brain now, but Benedict, when he's talking about Chekhov, and Stanislavski wrote to Chekhov, Chekhov wrote to Stanislavski, and was just sort of saying, what do we do in these pauses? Like, why have we got so many fucking pauses in the thing? And he's like, well, they should be a slipstream to eternity, you know. And there's a moment there where you're sort of struck by not only your present state, but something about the future and something about the past, you know. It's all, time is like wrapping in on itself. And there's moments where you're sort of, when I was at school and I was like, God, this scene, I mean, this would do the one scene over and over again. It means so much. It's like unlocking my understanding of the world or something. So I'm indebted to that school for that, because it made me pay attention to the detail of things.
Does it actually, though, make you frustrated that that kind of depth that you were getting in that, like doing a scene over and over again, in this line of work is not necessarily, I mean, unless you're doing theater or a Chekhov like this, is not necessarily like rewarded in the work that we do, particularly in front of the camera?
I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
because it's so transient, and it's almost like it's you're just moving from one job to the next. Who really pays attention to that, to a particular moment in that level of detail?
Exactly.
I hear what you're saying. I remember leaving America and going back to the UK and I was out of work for years. When I went back to the UK, I was like out of work for about 10 years or something, and I couldn't really get a job. And I had this amazing teacher called Elizabeth Kemp, and she taught this class called Basic Technique. And it was the first time that she, or anyone, said that being an actor is not just reliant on jobs, you know. It's not just reliant on somebody endowing you with like words to say. It's like you are and I even sort of like feel, because I'm British, but I feel like silly saying it, but you're sort of, she said that you were an artist. And then that made me go, well, it doesn't really matter what's rewarded or what's not rewarded.
Yes.
It doesn't really matter if people sort of pay attention.
Yes.
I could be out of work for 10 years or somebody could give me an opportunity. But the point is that when somebody does give me the opportunity, I'm going to bring what I think or what I know acting is and can be, and the potentiality of what acting is and can be, to this part, and do the best that I can with it, with the training that I had. And so it's sort of, and it's true, because it can make you feel disempowered if you think about it in that way. You just go, well, what's the point? Just get on with it, and nobody's... And that's true, but there's so much in the world to disempower actors. Like, the one thing that you should sort of hold on to is that your worth or your value or something.
Yes.
And if your worth and your value comes from wanting to mine a particular moment in a particular way, then do it. It's not hurting anyone.
Yes.
And that's where has an intrinsic value in itself to be in the world in that way, I think.
Yes. And did you really believe that, or did you rally yourself to believe that? Do you know what I mean? And do you think if you really believed that's what led to you actually starting to get work?
No, I don't think. No, I think it was. That's lots of things. That's luck. That's people giving you an opportunity. That's probably somebody seeing something in you that's like you didn't see in yourself. It's not all just down to me. It's like like a sort of, I don't know, confluence of different things which just happened. I think what I'm saying is that that's definitely been the common denominator throughout. It's just always going, what I learned at Actor Studio, and definitely what Elizabeth Kemp taught me. She's really sort of life changing for lots of people, not just me. She's an amazing teacher. She's not with us anymore, but it was sort of instilling that sort of. Just valuing yourself, because you can say 2 lines, or be all the way down the cast list, or you could be all the way at the top of the cast list. And the point is that you still have something to offer.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And that's the more important thing to sort of know.
Yes. Did it take some time to get used to acting for the camera?
Yeah.
And what was that process like for you?
I sort of felt like it was always the same. It's always sort of come from the same place, whether it's theatre or in front of the camera, or whether it's comedy or drama. It's the same sort of thing. You're just trying to work out what to do in the most truthful situation. The context of being in theatre is that you are in a space. Mm-hmm. So you want to communicate with everybody in that space. So that does mean like making sure that you reach that person wherever they are, but trying to make it feel as truthful as it can be. Same thing with comedy, same thing with drama, same thing with all of it. It all just sort of comes from the same place, which is like, figure out what the line is, try and say it in the most truthful way that you can, but just make sure that you're doing your best to reach that person,
Mm-hmm.
So, I try not to see a difference between the two, really. I try and, as best I can, the difference is sort of stark and obvious, but I try and trick my brain not to say
You know what I
mean? You are saying words, there's an obstacle to you saying those particular lines or those words in a particular way. And it's how you navigate that obstacle to get on the other side of it. That obstacle can be within the script, if you, whatever. Like Lopakhin, I'm playing Cherry Orchard. He's like, feels he is, under the sort of gaze of his father, or like, he's coming from serfs, and he has this kind of, so that's the opposite, and I suppose it's coming back to the original question, like, how do you play? Like, sometimes the obstacle of being in the work itself is enough, right? So the obstacle of like you know, if there's a big old film, people have, there's a lot of money attached to it. Like, that's nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
So just getting the lines out in the right order is like, do you know what I mean? Just making sure that they've given you some lines to say.
Yeah.
Just to say that is sometimes enough, and then the camera's right there anyway, and it's gonna pick up something, you know. So it's just do your best, really. You know?
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any particular approach from a director that works best for you?
Yeah. So right now I'm doing Cherry Orchard with Benedict Andrews, and there's a strange thing where we sit down, and when we stand up we're in the play.
Yeah.
But it's sort of interrogating the idea of performance, like how we sat down as the character, and we're sat down. When we stand up, like are we then the character or whatever? But I really been enjoying doing this play because the characterization is vast, right? So suddenly you're seeing how somebody is in life, and when they step into the character in the Cherry Orchard, you see them being a different character, but you see the spectrum of what that is, you know. And that's essentially like a director giving you as much space as he could possibly give within the context of theatre, and going, you're free. There's no wrong move here. There's nothing you do with your body, your voice, or anything. It's all part of the thing. So I love that. I love complete freedom.
Yeah.
I love the idea of, you know, a director following what the actor's doing and the action of the actor, and that dictating, you know, what happens in the film or whatever. But I also enjoy being held by a director who has a super clear vision, you know, who also understands the mechanics of being in a particular place at a particular time, like even like how your body sits in space, and just going, whether it's film or theatre, I enjoy somebody who has the confidence of understanding, well, if you just shifted your body this way, think what would happen, and now say the line, and suddenly something happens, which is completely new because it's out of your control. And that comes back to the mystery of performance. It's like, why, if I just shift myself here to here, does the feeling of the line completely change? And that's because this guy or this woman or whatever is just great at what they do, and they saw something, you know. So I like it all. I think the biggest thing is it's just, as long as I trust them. Yeah. As long as I trust them, and they're going, you're free to do it. That means that they've said to me that they obviously trust me to do. Yeah. And if I trust them and they're going, actually angle the chair this way, or just reach out for the thing, or you know, whatever it is, you know, I trust them, that I trust their vision and what they're doing, you know. Yeah. So trust is the biggest thing, I think.
Yeah. And you know, I've had that in the opposite way in my limited experience just acting, where it's like, oh, when I'm imposed with a certain way of doing something that doesn't feel natural, and I have to do it for some reason because the camera is a certain way, and I'm like, oh wow, this is so wrong. It's like, it feels so wrong.
I understand.
And I can't say no because it would require the entire thing to be relit.
So this is so interesting. So what I'm about to say is going to seem weirdly paradoxical, and also strange considering I went to the drama school that I went to. When you described it just then, when you described the pressure of like that there and the thing, and my acting teachers at school would, and this would always be a cop-out, and it frustrated me so much at school, and now I sort of get it. They would say, well, what happens if the character's feeling that, right? So you're using this quite subjective technique, which is all basically actor-centric, and you're applying it to a context where you feel like you're not in control of the thing that you want to be saying, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing more realer in that moment than you feeling you don't want to be doing that thing.
It's a very strong feeling. Maybe the strongest feeling of the day.
Right. So then just say the lines on top of that.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So there's nothing...
This podcast should have been called Use It.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. Use it.
Because what you're saying
maybe
is use it.
Yeah. Maybe that is just use it.
Use it.
Yeah, maybe use it.
It's so hard, though. And it's so hard to like tell yourself that in the moment rather than getting frustrated. Right? Because, part of the problem is like, you know.
But as long as you trust them, that's the bigger thing. Like the bigger thing is not so much, it's not the challenge. It's whether it's the person who's the context that you're in, the person that's doing the challenging. If you're going, oh, you're doing this for something that you know, that's kind of fine. You know, you can be challenged because there's something bigger on the other side of it that's even beyond you or beyond them. You know, and you know what? Like, there's going to be, I think there might even be situations where you might not trust them. You know, you're just there. But then you just make the idea of what you're trying to achieve is bigger than the two lines that you've been hired for. You know, we're talking about people at the start of their career, they're just a couple of lines and they've got to do this thing, and it's just like you don't feel great doing the part, and you're sort of devalued as an actor or whatever else. But the thing that you're doing, to come back to the original thing, that it's all to an end.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And the end is like you and who you are as an actor, and what the vision is for yourself as an actor, as opposed to those lines you're saying in that place. You know?
Yes.
So yeah, maybe use it, knowing that that's what the bigger picture is.
Yes. What was your relationship with Chekhov before this first iteration of the Cherry Orchard overseas?
We did a bit at school, you know, scenes from different plays.
How did you feel about him as in comparison to other of these masters, so-called masters that you were getting spoon-fed to you as a student?
Yeah. I responded very much to sort of Stanislavski's sort of stuff, you know, so all his training and everything. And I just responded to the fact that he was sort of intimately connected with Chekhov, and how this was, you know, the start of talking about people in a place going through an experience, ordinary lives, you know, ordinary lives just being lived. And we've got a sort of tradition of that. I've always been drawn to that, you know, even if you think of, you know, the kitchen, we've got a kitchen sink drama sort of world of, like, you know, look back in anger and all that sort of stuff. So I sort of responded to the immediacy of what that was. But like most things, it sort of becomes sort of, whether people like it or not, it just becomes this sort of immovable thing. Yeah. And I sort of thought that about, you know, it happens to lots of playwrights, you know, it's not doing anything new really. It's just kind of going over this sort of same old ground. So I always respond to revisiting something and trying to disassemble it in a way to find something new in it. Because that's kind of what that feels closer to what Chekhov was about in the first place. Right. You know, he was writing pre-revolution. There was a feeling in the air that he couldn't put his finger on, and all he could do was just sort of guess, sort of just, you know, he was sort of there was a change in the air, but he didn't understand what the change was, and that feels sort of quite. So after doing the Cherry Orchard, I've got a new. I always liked him, but I've got a new sort of respect for him now. Just to sort of think that he was reaching for something, you know. And whenever I see productions that do that, I go, that's kind of what he was about. He was just trying to work out what was going on, and what was going on was so unknowable at the time.
Yeah. Are there any differences between these two productions? The Cherry Orchard,
the Don Mar and the St. Anne's one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there is, in the sense that...
Did you adjust it for this space?
Yeah, exactly. We adjusted it for the space, but then...
And for the Idiot Americans, did you do that too?
No, there was a couple of things that he added, Trofimov stuff about tech oligarchs, and you know, I don't want to spoil it for people. They end up seeing it, but all that stuff, all he was talking about, you know. So there was that was the only sort of like text that was changed. Everything else was pretty much the same. But I suppose it was different in the sense that what Benedict Andrews director is sort of a genius at doing, especially with this. We're not blocked, so we're not told where to go.
Wow. Not at all.
No. So we can...
And that's right, because there's no lighting cue. There's no lighting cues. The lights are on.
Lights are constantly on.
On.
Yeah, and Magda, the designer, just did carpet and light, basically. So we can sort of move about and go anywhere we want. So not to be sort of like annoying about it, but I suppose every day it's a different play, you know. Wow. So to answer your question, yeah, it did change a lot being in St. Anne's Warehouse, because it's a bigger space, and that did inform the play a little bit, you know. There's moments which feel, but then that's the nature of, like, when you do one day to day, it changes. Like, they laughed here, they didn't laugh there.
Yeah.
They, you know, they found that moving, you know.
Yeah. And
we sing some songs in it, and you can tell when we sing the songs that people are sort of more moved by some songs here. You know, it's just, it's always different every day. So I suppose it's bound to be different, like doing it in St. Anne's Warehouse. That's the annoying answer.
Yeah. And I was shocked that my friend was suddenly being kind of in the play, because one of the actors was interacting with him.
Sure.
I'm so glad I didn't choose that seat.
Yeah.
I would have been mortified. But
you might not have been. That's the thing. No, but that's the thing. It's just such a beautiful, because we feel sort of custodians of the audience, you know. We look after, because on some level they're looking after us as well, right. You know, because it's a theatre in the round. There's no right. So we're the audience as well.
That's right.
And you know, and
think about it.
And the idea of theatre in the round is developed by the Greeks when there was no stages. So it was just, you know, somebody walked onto a space and it was just 5 people, and then it went out of favour, and then came back in the 60s where people were trying to make this space kind of equal and egalitarian, and that was the sort of thought behind it as well, you know. Just the fact that we're sharing this with you as opposed to, you know. Yeah.
Is this the work that Benedict had you kind of break down his play?
So his process is basically we sit around the table, we talk and do readings around the table for quite a long time before we get up on our feet, feeling how the words sound in their mouth, and just kind of testing out objectives and things, but just really loosely, not sort of actory stuff, just kind of like working it out. And then Benedict would chip in with, like, you know, a letter that Chekhov wrote to somebody, to a particular, you know, director at the time, or a letter that an actor wrote to Chekhov when it was, you know, so it's peppered with like this sort of history of like the play, and this, and so we're kind of just loosely just sort of like investigating the play, because I suppose with if you do Chekhov in a traditional way, people have sort of found ways of doing it, and they revisit those same ways of doing the same thing, whereas it felt like Benno was working out what the tone was for what we were going to do. He had a lot of things that he knew that were going to happen, you know, but it was important for us to develop a sort of understanding of what these characters were, so that we could have the confidence to move on stage in freedom. You're only really blocking is just somebody telling you what to do, basically. And he didn't really want to tell us what to do.
Right.
He wanted us to discover that.
Doesn't that just improve everything when you dictate where you're moving based on what you know about this person, rather than what somebody's just telling you to do arbitrarily and early on in some kind of run through?
Yeah.
Huge difference, right?
But coming back to my original, when we were talking about it before, I don't mind somebody telling me what to do, as long as
it makes sense.
I trust them, and also it feels like it unlocks something, or I get an awareness.
Right.
One of the things that I was saying before, that I'm going, oh Jesus, that was a mystery to me.
Yeah.
And there was something sort of quite mechanical that sort of opened something up, that I'm like, oh my good God, you know, which you know, a good director does. Benno does it as well, you know. Like, I remember when I was doing a lot of the stuff, not a lot of the stuff, but some stuff, I would have a tendency to look on the ground, you know. And you would just be like, well, just lift your head up a little bit. And you lift your head up a little bit, and it's like, oh, you're kind of, you know, you're with people.
Yeah, yeah. So he'll chime in on something like that as a little bit of a direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then it's just also it's just a sort of mechanical thing. Like if you're speaking down, that person there.
Yeah.
Like I say, if you just tilt your head up a little bit, then suddenly, and even if it's just a slight glance over there, suddenly that person is in.
Right.
When they weren't before, you know.
Right.
Which is, you know, somebody who's just had a lot of years of experience of doing theatre, of just going like, there's a third of the audience there. All you got to do is like do this for a second, because we're doing, you know, we can move anywhere we want. He's just like, well, make sure the energy is there a little bit. It doesn't have to be like bink, but it has to be, you know.
Yes.
For those people who are listening, I was using my hands a lot.
Yeah. We should be on video.
Yeah.
Here's a quote from you that I just want you to give it more context. There are definitely some parallels between Lopakhin and me getting back to the theater. What did you mean by that?
I suppose Lopakhin starts the play in a space where he's sort of questioning lots of things about himself and his ability to be in that space with these people. You know, he's a product of serfdom. His father is like, you know, was a servant, and you know, I was asked to do this production for Benno and this beautiful company of people, and there was the parallel of going, well, because I hadn't done theatre in such a long time, can I even do it, you know? Can I sort of do the part justice, but not let, you know, the cast down, make sure that Benno's made the right choice for hire, you know, ask me to play this part, you know. So that, I suppose that's the parallel to draw, just to sort of, you know, when Lopakhin's speaking, he's sort of trying to enact his reality. And I definitely felt like doing this now, and, you know, because I love watching theatre. I love being in theatre, but I'd never done anything this size before. So it was sort of like a statement of purpose almost, you know, just like every time he's speaking, it's sort of enacting his reality in the world, and it's definitely the same. But that's the beauty of theatre. It parallels your life in sort of mysterious ways.
Yes. When you got the BAFTA, suddenly, here's this recognition, tangible, indisputable. Does this change the way that you approached what you wanted to do with your career? Or was that simple validation that, okay, I'm going to keep on this road?
I'm lucky that my agent and I, she's known me since I was she's known me all that time when I wasn't working, obviously, because she was my agent. And we've known each other for a very long time. And the idea is, we've just always been the same, you know. Maybe it does sort of link to what we were saying very early on, of going, you know, whether it's 2 lines and you're further down the cast list, or whether it's something that you do and then you get an accolade out, you know, it's sort of surprised that you did, or whether, you know, it's the sort of mission's the same, isn't it? It's always just to sort of do the best work that you can and make sure that you don't, you know, the people that have hired you don't regret hiring you, you know. It's just like do the best work that you can, and then that kind of, then you suddenly find yourself in a place where you're just having nice chats with people. You know, it's just an extension of a conversation for me at the end of the day. And those conversations sort of, you know, tip into the work, and then they sometimes don't, and it's just a question of, like, you know, full circle in this whole conversation. It's like going back to, you know, the actor student Elizabeth Campbell and what she said. It's just like, you have value to add to something, work out what that is, and then, you know, the thing's already happened, you know, really. It's just kind of just the work feeds you, and then you feed the work, and you're in the world, and it's just this lovely sort of flow situation. The times when you feel really unhappy and the times when you're sort of questioning yourself and feeling really low are the moments where you don't know where to put this value that you have. There's nothing to, you know. Somebody was talking about the idea of self-determination. It's like it's a two-pronged thing. It's like having value, and the second thing is to have a place to put that, like have a common goal that you can add that value to. And for a long time, we think about independence of countries or people, we just go, no, you're valuable. And we just leave them and they go, oh, great, I've got all this value. But unless that people have got a place to put it, it doesn't mean much. Yeah. And so it's really important to be clear about your value, which is fine, you know, but also knowing that value can be applied in a place, and it's worth something. That's basically the mission statement.
Adeel Akhtar, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.